let me start out with telling you a little bit about my brother Jack. Well, first of all, he's a top student. Second of all, he's a top math student and is currently studying in the major of applied mathematics in college. He's super intelligent in any subject, and he's that type of person that can look at a math equation and say, oh, the answer is 2.54 to the x power, whereas it would take me half an hour just to solve this one problem. Where my brother is lacking, though, is in his social skills. Although his motives are pure, he has a tendency to say the wrong things and at the wrong time. Or he would go up to a girl in school and say, hey, you come here often? Maybe that's just a case of bad flirting. But in the grander scheme of things, I began to think, well, what does this mean? And I came to the conclusion that he must have a very high IQ, intelligence quotient, and a not so high EQ, emotional quotient. So this got me thinking, what is an emotional quotient? Why is it so important? What is more advantageous in obtaining success? An emotional quotient or an intelligence quotient? Is emotional intelligence something that can be learned, or is it solely an innate ability? Well, my first question was, what even is an emotional quotient? And so upon some research, I found out that there are 5 main pillars to emotional intelligence. The first being self-awareness, which is the ability to understand our own emotions. The second, self-management, which is when someone can manage their own emotions and adapt their responses and moods. Motivation, and that's the ability to use our emotions to motivate ourselves. And empathy, which is to take others' emotions and perspectives into account. And last but not least, social skill, in which one can lead a team and negotiate a conflict. So why is an emotional intelligence so important? Okay, who here can tell me what emotion this man is portraying? Who thinks it's jealous? Put your hands up. Okay, nobody. Who thinks it's panicked? Hands up. Okay, so quite a few. Arrogant? No? Okay. Hateful? A couple. Okay, well the actual answer is panicked, so good job with those of you who guessed it right. And so imagine if you were in a conversation with this person. How would you react to his emotion? Could you still carry the conversation? So interestingly enough, the discussion around emotional intelligence didn't become popular until very recently. Peter Savoy and John D. Mayer coined the term emotional intelligence in 1990 and described it as a form of social intelligence that involves the ability to monitor one's own and others' feelings and emotions, to discriminate among them, and to use this information to guide one's thinking and action. However, the person most commonly associated with emotional intelligence is Daniel Goleman, a science writer for the New York Times. In 1995, Goleman published his book, Emotional Intelligence, and Why It Can Matter More Than IQ. Goleman argues that it is not cognitive intelligence that guarantees business success, but emotional intelligence. And he also argues that people with a higher emotional intelligence are generally happier in life. So, my second question was, what is more advantageous in obtaining success? An emotional quotient or an intelligence quotient? Well, firstly, let me define an IQ. An intelligence quotient is a score derived from one of several cognitive standardized tests designed to assess intelligence. And through my research, I found a study that answered my question. Lewis Terman's study of genius and gifted children in 1921. Terman believed that there is nothing about an individual as important as his IQ and possibly his morals. In his genetic studies of genius, Terman identified 1,470 children whose IQs ranged from 140 to 200. And just to put that into perspective, Einstein's IQ was 160. These children, nicknamed termites, were the 99th percentile of the 99th percentile, and they were destined to become the future elite of the United States. Terman soon realized that intellect and achievement are far from perfectly correlated, as many of his termites ended up with jobs that he would even call failures. Many were unemployed and many were postal workers. No offense to any postal workers in the audience. And there was not one single Nobel Prize winner in his pool of applicants. And ironically, 2 elementary students who were rejected from Terman's experiment as their IQs weren't high enough, actually went on to become Nobel laureates. And so what Terman failed to realize is that there are many limitations to an IQ, and that the brain's capabilities cannot be measured by a single score. And so what I've come to realize is that there's a threshold to an IQ. And I will explain this in terms of basketball. A person that is 5'4" cannot expect to be extremely successful in professional basketball, realistically speaking. That person would need to be at least 6 foot, or better yet, 6'2". However, someone that is 6'8" is not automatically better than someone that is 6'2". In other words, this person just needs to be tall enough. And this explains why people with average IQs outperform those with the highest IQs 70% of the time. And so, my final question was, can someone actually improve their emotional intelligence? If so, should we actually define it as a social, should we actually define emotional intelligence as a social skill set, or rather than an intelligence? I went and talked to Colleen Knudsen, ISP school psychologist, and she explained to me that she works with children who are incapable of executing what seems to us as the most mundane tasks. She often works with children who cannot ask other kids to play, or she works with children who exclude themselves from a social environment. Something interesting she noted was that even if non-English speakers came to the school, they were still able to play with other children, as language isn't the barrier, and social play is their language. And it's the lack of social skills that can really hinder a student. And to aid students that need to work on their social skills, Colleen Knudsen uses these tools called social stories, which are picture books that depict what to say in certain situations. And sometimes she would even role play with her students. And she told me that some students would improve their social skills in just a semester, and some would even need to take up to 2 years. And so, from empirically speaking, yes, one can improve their emotional intelligence. I watched my brother over the years improve on his communicative skills, little by little, and eventually he became less socially awkward. I once asked my brother, "Jack, how did you improve your EQ?" And he responded, "Well, I read online, the only way to improve your IQ is through your willpower." And I just added the same logic to my EQ. When I was in a new social setting, I would introduce myself to 5 new people I had never met before. I would remember to keep eye contact and smile and so forth, until it became natural. And right then and there, I realized something. Jack's EQ wasn't all that bad. Jack has grit and tenacity, all of which are non-cognitive attributes. And these traits are based on an individual's passion for a long-term goal. Jack developed his social skills and in turn became very successful. He was student class president his senior year, one of the best, I would like to add. And, and he even completed a couple internships successfully in college. And I simply could not be prouder of him. Thank you very much.